This episode of I Work For Him is sponsored by SaferNet, Patriot Mobile, and the U.S. Christian Chamber 2026 Expo, found online at swc2026.com, code I Work For Him. You've tuned into I Work For Him, the voice of collaboration for the faith and work movement.
And we are your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenbergen. Our mission is to inspire every workplace believer to recognize their workplace as their ministry place where they work with God every day. What can that look like in your workplace? Well, let's find out right now.
You know, when you grow up in a family business, there's an expectation that you'll follow in the family business footsteps. In the insurance world, that expectation is very high. In the insurance world, in small town agencies, it is almost certain. So how do you live with those kinds of expectations and still follow the Lord's leading? How do you prepare to transition a lead from the third generation when your health falls apart suddenly and you're a wife and you're a mom and you're a daughter? So many of us think that life is predictable, but when following Jesus, he uses adversity in our lives to take us from who we are to who he can use more effectively. Well, Lauren Layman has her story to tell, and it's full of adversity and huge victories. Lauren Layman, welcome to I Work For Him. You're here, right?
I am. Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Welcome. Sorry.
Thank you.
We don't often get to have in-studio guests, and today we're privileged to actually cover a story right here from Marionville, Missouri, where God has moved us now 3.5 years ago. Yeah. We're so grateful to be able to have somebody from our new hometown, which we love, right in studio with us. So, Lauren, we always start out with first-time guests with this question. How did you come to be a follower of Jesus, and when did you cement it as part of your life as an adult?
So it's funny that you asked this question because honestly, it's probably a question that I have struggled with for 42 years. I grew up in church, you know. Mom was the director of Bible school. She also still is.
Yes, she is.
Took a break and now is back.
And she wore a chicken outfit in church just a week ago to promote Bible school.
Hey, and the apple does not fall far from that tree. Let's be honest. So yeah, I grew up in church. Church was always a part of my life, and so I remember going and I talked with Pastor Max. Whenever I was young, probably I'm going to say late elementary school. I cannot tell you the exact day that I asked Jesus into my heart. I remember, I went into his office, and, he kind of helped me. Well, first I remember talking with my mom and dad, and they said, hey, let's go talk to Pastor Max. And so I went and talked with him. And I just remember thinking, okay, this is big. But then I was scared. Because it was probably, Mom and Dad could probably tell you more. It was probably at least a year before, traditional Baptist church, you walk the aisle and you
walk the aisle.
It's like you're walking the plank is kind of what it felt like.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't publicly make my faith known for probably over a year. And then went through the whole baptism thing, grew up in youth group, then continued on going. I didn't have that major rebellious streak. I know that probably some kids did, but I always struggled because I never felt like I had that line in the sand of this is who I was before and this is who I was after. So many people have that story.
You should be grateful to God that you don't have that. That's fantastic.
But I really struggled with it. It was I remember I read that Left Behind series, and there was times in the middle of the night. I was always an anxious kid. I woke up in the middle of the night, literally walked in my parents' room to make sure they were still there because I was afraid that whatever I had done hadn't been enough. And I think that's probably the story of so many Christians. Really, okay, was this really enough? Just because it doesn't seem possible that all you have to do is pray a prayer and then. And obviously your life's not perfect. We'll get into that later. It's not always easy.
Actually, it's almost certainly going to be much more difficult because you follow Jesus.
Absolutely. Which is how we will get into things. But was involved in student ministry in college. Church was always, that was one of the things we checked off our list when Nick and I got married was, okay, we're going to find a church home. And check it off, find a church home. And we found a great community there. We're still there. We're still attending that same church on the north side of Springfield. Another Baptist church, but, maybe a little bit less traditional in nature. And so, but again, we were just kind of it was what we did because it's what you do, not necessarily. And so as I look back, I had those mountaintop moments at youth group or youth camp or, even during college ministry, but I don't truly know if I would be able to sit here and say that I felt that my relationship with the Lord was strong until 18 months ago, maybe 15 months ago. It was always there, and it always, I was like, okay, I should say this Sunday school thing, and I felt like I, was doing the right thing, and, but God has never been more present than he was, 12 to 15 months ago, because I didn't have any other choice.
And we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that you have recognized that and see God's hand in your life. Like Jim said at the beginning of the show, adversity often takes us from who we are to who God can use more effectively.
Yeah.
We don't like that. That's not necessarily the prescription we would write for ourselves, but it is, because if we do end up leaning on him rather than the world or other people, the results are very different. So let's talk a little bit about your career path, and then we're going to get into what God has done in the last couple of years of your life. So did you always have the expectation on you, and or did you just assume, or did you want to always be in insurance? What did that path look like for you?
So I would say it's probably a little bit of both.
Because your brother Nick said, I'm out. I'm going to be an attorney.
I was the oldest. I was not as involved in things during the summer. And so, again, I'm terrible with dates, but early high school, I started cleaning the office first, scrubbing toilets.
I cleaned my dad's office. I mean, that's what we do.
So cleaned our office, and then started working in the summertime, 2 or 3 days a week doing the grunt work kind of thing. That was back when we had so much paper, and so many things were manual. We had to manually call in changes, to insurance carriers, or manually calling claims. And so I'd have a stack, and we, maintained a mailing list on I don't even think it was an Excel spreadsheet. I think it was like a
Lotus
Word something. I don't know. It was literally like a mailing list. That's all it was. And so it was a nightmare to keep updated. Anyways, started doing that kind of thing. I think I don't know if I fell into the insurance industry. Looking back, and my parents know this, so this isn't a surprise to them. I have had midlife crises several times, in my life.
And you haven't even gotten to midlife yet.
Right. My mom would tell you, about every 7 years, I have this, identity crisis, and is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And did I take the easy route? Because honestly, that is a little bit what I did, just because I never interviewed for a single job my entire life. I got my MBA from Missouri State.
I don't know if that's true, though, because you are on the school board.
Yes, but that was...
But you're interviewing with an entire city of 20,000 people.
And also, nobody ran against me, so I didn't
so they were scared to death of you,
that's right.
So it was a unanimous verdict?
Yes. So I didn't, I call it the easy route, but in reality, it was the easy route at the time, but in the reality, it was probably the hardest route, just because working for family is hard. It impacts your relationships. It's always, it's either the elephant in the room that's really sad and really grumpy and might want to trample you, or it's the elephant in the room that's this is great, but it could turn at any moment. And that's just the nature of business in general. And then when you add family into it, it's a whole different conversation. And so I will say that I probably felt some expectation. It was a third generation. I love my grandparents. They started it. It was a successful business. I felt some obligation to carry on that legacy. But I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to do the parts of the business that needed to be done to make it successful.
Meaning the selling,
Yes.
like you're not a
Yes.
salesman, but
Yes.
your focus
You
is
are
what is
such
your
a salesperson.
But she's not like me. I got it licensed with our insurance agency, but I wasn't out selling insurance. I
right.
took care of the customers.
Yes.
I love that. I
Yes.
love, making sure that
She
things
also
were
was
of
a very
order.
good salesperson.
But the same thing. I know what you're saying. I can
Right.
relate to you. So what part of the business is your focus?
So I pretty much told my dad that if he wanted me to stay working there, that I didn't want to do the selling part.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't, and I mean, that was a privilege. I realize in a lot of businesses, you can't just go into your boss and be like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore.
But your daddy's a little girl, so you can
I
say whatever
am.
you want to say. That's right.
And obviously it was important to him to continue the family legacy, dynasty, whatever, if Jim throws out that word later. And so it was important to him, and so we kind of just had to find a way to make that work. And the work that I focus on now is important, and it wasn't anything that anybody had time to focus on before. So
and that is what?
I handle all of the internal marketing, the external marketing, the community support, a little bit of business development, but really just maintaining those relationships, maintaining the relationships with our company representatives. I'm, building those relationships with the territory reps and the other people that stop by our office. But just handling a lot of that brand awareness, building that face,
and
for
getting
our
to
office.
use your creativity
Yeah.
in amazing ways,
Right.
which is really neat. And we will put a link to Smart Insurance in the show notes for people so they can go check it out.
Yeah.
Because I think you do I know you do a great job. But what it made me think of is the fact that a lot of people, like you say, it's all stuff we want to do, but in a family business especially, you can kind of feel torn between making the sales
Right.
and making things look pretty
Yeah.
and making things, appeal to people. And you've gotten that privilege to be able to do that in a way that really has, I believe, accelerated the brand of
Right.
your family in amazing ways. So,
And when I went to working part-time, when I had our first little girl, it kind of happened, that transition happened fairly naturally because the group of clients I did have, because we all work as a team at Smart
Sure.
Insurance, nobody has like their client that can't be helped by others. And so when we did that, and I wasn't there all the time, that transition kind of happened naturally because I wasn't there to answer the questions. And so that really, helped that, adjustment be smooth.
Yes.
Because people stopped asking for me, and I was thankful for that.
that was okay. At the,
That's right. That's right.
As a business owner, we always need support in the community. And one great place to find support is with other like-minded Christ followers that are members of the U.S. Christian Chamber of Commerce. At the U.S. Christian Chamber, they connect faith-driven leaders through powerful events, relationships, and resources. Join I Work for Him and hundreds of others, probably now thousands of others, joining the U.S. Christian Chamber across the country where business and faith thrive together. And join us together next spring in 2026 at their spiritual world, at the Christian, what is it?
Spiritual World Citizens, but it's swc2026.com.
Right.
And we will have a code for you to get your tickets there and join us for their, actually, I guess it's like a biannual event.
Yeah, big expo in Orlando in the spring of 2026, where Martha and I will be part of that event. And we'd love for you to join the chamber and be part of the event. Go at uschristianchamber.com. But if you decide to go to the expo, make sure you put in the keyword I Work for Him. All right. Lauren, you're married to Nick. We've gotten to know Nick. He's a runner. He's actually freakishly passionate about running, which, you can get counseling for that.
I thought you were going to say freakishly passionate about insurance.
He is very good at what he does. But you're married to Nick. You got 2 kids. Life was perfect. Cute little house in a cute little suburban city of Republic, Missouri. And then your world fell apart last year. What happened?
Gosh, what happened? It all kind of started January, February. I just didn't feel good, mentally or physically. Part of it was probably anxiety, and that's how they treated it at first, was severe anxiety, which honestly didn't surprise me. Like I said, I'd always been an anxious person, but, started going to the doctor, got on some medication. Don't be afraid to get on medication. I believe that God creates doctors with wisdom and knowledge to help you. And so got on some medication, and it took a while for my body to adjust to that. Thought I was losing my mind in some serious ways. Just didn't have the energy, didn't have the drive, didn't know if I was going to wake up the next morning and really feel like getting out of bed. And it wasn't that I didn't want to get out of bed. I wanted to get out of bed. So the mental health part of it was I had the desire. I just couldn't make myself. And so had my mom and my dad and Nick. Nick was the dad, last year. He was the parent this time last year, just because my health was so unpredictable. And so there are things today that Elise and Nora, our daughters, will talk about, and I'll just look at them and be like, Mom doesn't remember. Like, I don't remember what we did in this situation last year or what we did for this last year. I know what I didn't do, which was a lot. So had to pull back from practically everything. And so kind of got the anxiety under control, but then the physical symptoms started. Hair started falling out. Just, again, still lack of energy. We were trying lots of things, running lots of tests, but also trying we couldn't test everything at once because then you don't really know what's causing the issues. And so I lost about 25 pounds or so. Lost 25 pounds, was super skinny, not healthy. Wasn't able to really process calories like I needed to. And then ended up in the emergency room a few times to get fluids. And I'd never been to the emergency room before, ever. But
It's such a great place to go.
Especially
on a Friday night.
Monette emergency room is a fantastic place to go on like a Monday morning. It's pretty good. But so went there, was seeing my doctor multiple times a week. Like literally my mom would drive me to the doctor multiple times a week. And it's hard to kind of gauge when things like physically, actually in May of last year, my legs started swelling. Went to the doctor, and I'm in my younger, lower 40s. And so at first, the doctor was like, hey, maybe you're just eating too much salt, like that little bit of water retention, which is very valid because at that point it wasn't as bad. And I should probably back up a little bit. I'd had some off blood work, went and saw a hematologist, and they said, well, you probably have an autoimmune disease. In fact, we're pretty certain you have an autoimmune disease, but there's a lot of those. And so until you have other symptoms, it's not really worth testing to figure out which one. Which I guess was comforting at the time because it was like, well, nothing was that serious. Looking back on it, we should have advocated better. Because my mom or Nick or somebody was with me in all these appointments. I wasn't going alone because I wasn't able to remember properly. I would either go down a wrong rabbit hole or I would remember a rabbit hole that wasn't there. And so anyways, I decided to go on vacation in June. Again, I was swelling. We flew. Probably a bad idea. But we went because I had planned vacation. The girls were excited. Ended up going to the emergency room on vacation in Hilton Head because I was able to do things during the day, but then like my legs would swell. And I gained all of that 20 pounds back with, had pitting edema in my legs and then was move up my torso and came back from vacation, was not in good health, started, the journey of running some tests, did Bible school, sitting on the front pew with my feet up because I couldn't wear normal shoes, couldn't wear normal pants. I was very unhealthy. And we knew something was really wrong. And so it was the Friday or the Thursday of Bible school at Marionville First Baptist where I was helping with Mom and you guys and went to see a nephrologist. And his dad was a pastor. And he said, I'm not supposed to tell you this. He said, there was a lot, obviously, that went in, but with those conversations. But he said, "I'm pretty sure you have lupus," which we had known. We thought that's what it was, but we couldn't get anybody to confirm it.
Right.
And he said, "I think you have lupus." And I left, and he called me, and there were lots of different options, but he said, "If you were my daughter," this is what he wasn't supposed to tell me. "If you were my daughter, I'd get in the car and I'd drive to Barnes in St. Louis, and I would self-admit myself into the emergency room." And because of my swelling, he thought they would admit me. He said, "We don't have the resources in Springfield." And I will never be more thankful that God used him. And he spoke words that he probably wasn't supposed to. Because then I spent a week at Barnes. And we prayed, and we prayed, and I prayed. Because that's it. I didn't have anything else to do. Like, I could not. Everything was out of my control. Nothing I did otherwise made me feel better for long. It was not long term. And I couldn't. It's not that I, felt suicidal. That wasn't it. But I couldn't live like that. I wasn't like that. I was an active mom. I was engaged with the girls. They were active. I had friendships and community that needed me. Jim, we laughed. I had Republic graduation this spring, and I told a few people, it's a class of like 450, maybe closer to 400. It was my first term as a school board member. And I sat through that entire graduation in a full-blown panic attack, popping peppermints and warheads, trying to trick my brain into sitting there. And only by the grace of God did I survive that. But I had my entire village praying that I would make it through. And so I just, went to St. Louis. We prayed the whole way up there. God, my pastor called and he said, God, grant her a person of peace, to walk. There's a verse in the Bible that says that. Jim, you probably know what it is. I don't even know. But give her a person of peace to help walk her through this.
Yeah.
And from the minute that we walked into Barnes Jewish Hospital in downtown St. Louis, we left to go to the ER on Thursday night. And my brother called, and through a random course of events, we turned around.
I remember all that because we were praying too. And it was, you were going, you were not going, you're going. It was like, okay, Lord, just clear the way, whatever's supposed to happen.
And we were going to go on that Thursday night. We turned around and we're like, no, we're not going to go. And, that was probably there were lots of God whispers, but that was probably the first one because my brother said, he had warned me because he's been up there for different work things. And he said, I need you to know that the Barnes Jewish emergency room is not going to be like the emergency room at Monette. It's not going to be like the emergency room in Springfield. Like, it's going to be rough. And I don't know why God didn't want us to go on that Thursday night, but we went on Friday or on Saturday morning. We got up. I said probably the hardest goodbye I'd ever said to my kids. It wasn't that I thought I wasn't coming back. I just didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
How long I was going to be there, how long the girls were going to have to be with grandparents. And they were scared, understandably. Like, they didn't know what was wrong with their mom. But I knew that I was going to the place where the right answers, hopefully, we'd find the right answers. People would be able to study me. They said I needed to go to a school, a study hospital, a university hospital where they had all these doctors working on me at the same time. And so went up there, and there are so many God winks that I could pull up on my phone right now from that week. I mean, you just have no idea, so many. But the one that sticks out right now is the person that transported me from the emergency room to the waiting room for where they were going to let me they transferred me from the emergency room to like the area before I could get an actual hospital room. Her name was Heaven. Her name was Heaven.
Oh.
And they were all so nice and that was that person of peace. And I had that from the moment I stepped in there. And gosh, that week was one of the hardest of my life.
So talk about that for a minute. So you're dealing with knowing something's terribly wrong. This is not my normal way of feeling, but we don't know what it is. How did you deal with, okay, God knew. God knows what you're going through. How did you lean on him during that time?
Every minute, every second of every day. And I will tell you, the spiritual warfare during that time was real. Our marriage was being attacked in ways that we'd never experienced before from outside forces. And I don't want to get into that, but it was, I was texting some people, I was like, we are under attack. There was part of it that thought that I was under attack because I had just gotten on school board. And I don't think that Satan probably really liked that a strong Christian woman was, on a public school board, helping to support our kids and our students and, standing for them. I had always said that my life had gone pretty easy and I was just waiting for the shoe to drop. That created anxiety in me. I was really afraid it was going to be one of my kids. But it was me. And I got, I was Job for a while, because I didn't lose everything, but I felt like I was. I felt like I wasn't sure when I was going to be back to myself. I wasn't sure when I was going to feel normal again. I wasn't sure when I was going to be able to be back to the mom, but I also realized that my life didn't have to be perfect for God to show up.
Amen. So one of the things that you've said many times during this conversation already is that you did have people around you praying for you and supporting you. And that truly is a huge part of the story that you're telling. And it's your testimony that God's been writing. There are many things that truly matter in our lives. But when we make good kingdom decisions, it can take some of the burden off of our shoulders. And two decisions that we've made to help with that at I Work for Him and personally is switching our cell phone service to Patriot Mobile, and protecting our computers and mobile devices with SaferNet. Both of these companies' values align with ours and use their resources for good and not for evil. Patriot Mobile is a cell phone company based on faith, family, and freedom, with all U.S.-based customer service to walk you through the transfer process. SaferNet is a cybersecurity company dedicated to protecting all of your devices to keep the bad guys out and allow us to focus on the mission that God has for us. Learn about Patriot Mobile, SaferNet, and our other sponsors when you visit iworkforhim.com/sponsors.
All right. So that was a year ago, your story, Lauren. You're in St. Louis. Now we're a year later. God's brought a lot of resolution and a lot of clarity.
Yep.
Finish the story.
Yeah. So, got a diagnosis. Finally, literally praise God. Like, that's what we were hoping for, was a diagnosis. It was a long journey, but I was there for a week and came home with an official diagnosis of lupus nephritis, which is lupus with kidney involvement, which explained the swelling. Came home and had significant steroid treatment, gained like another 15 pounds. So at one point, I was up probably close to 40 pounds, over maybe closer to 50, over from where I bottomed out when I was so unhealthy to then once I gained all of the water weight and then the steroid treatment.
Which is hard on your body also.
So hard on your body.
Yeah.
And, we all want the quick fix, right? Like, I wanted to take this pill and everything be okay. And my doctors were amazing, and they were like, this is going to be a journey. Like, I need you to understand, this is not going to be something that is going to go away tomorrow. It's not going to be a thing that's going to go away by next week. And I said, like, okay, this was in July. I said, am I going to feel better by Christmas? And they were like, yes. I said, okay. I said, I can handle that. I need proper expectations. Don't tell me it's going to be tomorrow and it's, 6 months from now. And so I just started doing the thing. I went, I was seeing a counselor to talk to somebody a good Christian counselor. I saw her once a week for a while. I got set up with doctors here, so I didn't have to drive back and forth to St. Louis. And I just started doing the things. Like, we just started doing every next step with God all the way. Like, and knowing as we looked at all of those things lining up, He was in every single one of them. There were doctors I had access to that I shouldn't have had access to. There were doctors that showed up and gave me information that through some crazy things happening, and including my brother, kind of making some phone calls and just being my brother, that got us in touch with the doctors that I needed.
Right.
The specialists at Barnes who were, top of the line and, ready to help. And so I just started doing the thing, and I gradually just started to feel better, and I had my energy back, and started losing the water weight, and just my hair started coming back in, and my personality was back, and I was able to laugh. Really laugh, not like, the fake, I'm fine kind of thing. And gosh, God just keeps on providing. Our marriage right now is in a place where it's never been before, positively. It's a good thing. And Nick and I have even said, like, gosh, that really sucked. That was really terrible. And we didn't really even know how to like be husband and wife in that time because we hadn't been through that kind of trial. We both grew up with really boring childhoods. And so when you haven't ever
No
been
offense to your parents.
No,
Boring-
neither one of them.
boring is good.
Boring is good, but we didn't know how to handle the adversity. Like we didn't know what to do. Listened to lots of worship music. I couldn't really listen to the Bible because I couldn't process it. Couldn't really read, so I just listened to worship music over and over again. Same songs over and over again. And God is good. Like, He is. And, if anything, it's taught me that we can do really hard things with Him. And we've been able to teach our girls that sometimes we have to do really hard things. The girl who has a serious needle phobia, who passed out when she had to give blood as a sophomore in high school, frequently doesn't do well with needles, now gives herself an injection every week.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds silly, but only God.
Yep.
Like, seriously, like, only God.
Yes.
And I don't really have a choice at this point because the other option is not an option for me. Sitting on the sidelines of my life with the girls and with the business, with my husband and with my friends, it's not an option. And so I just do what I do what I have to feel better.
So I'm curious how this testimony that God's been writing in your life, how does it affect your day-to-day now when you work with customers or vendors or marketing or your family or your friends? Like, how do you see that translating into who you have become today?
I have a lot more grace. Because, gosh, you have no idea what people are going through. You just have no idea. Because a lot of people didn't know. I just told you guys, I have not made this public.
Yeah.
There are lots of people who know, hundreds of people who know. But I didn't go blaring my diagnosis on Facebook or Instagram or any other sort of social media. It just wasn't. I didn't need that.
Sure.
God didn't need that to use it.
But what you're saying is like, with not knowing what people are going through, you could have been in a checkout line at a store having a really hard day, and that cashier has no idea what you're dealing with. And, I think we need in all of our work, taking that perspective into our interactions with other people is huge.
Yeah, I didn't really consider myself an empathetic person before. Our daughter Nora is like crazy empathetic. Like it's, and maybe I am, and maybe it had just been like suppressed for all these years. I'm a perfectionist, so I didn't want to, show that emotional weakness, I guess. But it's really an emotional strength to be able to try to relate to people, try to be patient with them. As far as the day-to-day goes, I go to God with almost everything right now. Whether it's if it's, the business with, what the future looks like for that, we want God in that. Whether it's with our daughters and their athletic tryouts or the teachers they're going to have. Anytime something comes across my mind right now, before I would worry about it. And now it doesn't have to be fancy, right? Like, you don't have to drop to your knees and have this big elaborate prayer that's, 17 points. Just be like, God, just be with them. Just watch over them. Help them follow, your path. You've already written the path. Just help them follow it. Help me follow it. We prayed a lot during that time of slam the doors shut that need slammed and crack the windows that need cracked and lead us lead us to the air, like lead us in a way that you need us to go. And he did that in ways that I still, like, that's why I kept notes in my phone. I was like, I don't want to forget this. Yeah. Like, I want to go back to this monument in my life. When the Israelites were walking through the wilderness, they put up, monuments to remember where God had brought them from. And I don't have
when
that.
they didn't remember,
and
they
then
had
they
to
didn't
go through
remember
more things.
They didn't remember.
Like, Lord, help me remember
right.
so I don't have to re-experience.
I don't want to forget how he stood, how he had my back.
Yeah.
And that sounds silly and cliche, but like he really does.
No.
But I hadn't ever had to lean into it before. And I have never had people pray for me. I had a girl in my neighborhood who I'm friends with, but we don't hang out. She lives down the street, has a daughter, but she's not the same age. And we've had some conversations, but not super deep. She fasted for me for 3 days.
Wow.
I've never had anybody fast for me before. She didn't eat. And she prayed. And I know that you guys and so many others did, and it's humbling.
So what would you say right now to the listeners that either they're going through a hard time and they don't see the end, they don't see the diagnosis, they don't see where it's going, or they have somebody in their life that's in that position? Yeah. What would you say to them to encourage and challenge them today?
I want to say just keep going. Keep fighting for yourself. Ask God to know where to fight. Know what to fight for. As Jim said, our life is certainly going to be more difficult if we follow Jesus. That's reality. And when you're closer to God, it's probably going to be even harder. But know that he hasn't left you. Even when it felt like I was all alone, and there were many nights at Barnes that I was all alone next to my hospital roommate who was on a, sleep apnea machine I was there by myself, and I had no one except for the nurses who walked in that had Bible verses tattooed on their arms, or the nurses who I'm a talker like Jim. I just, ask about them. And I remember I prayed with one of the nurses who was drawing 18 vials of blood from my arm.
So it was a good long prayer.
Yeah.
It was.
Terrifying.
But we didn't pray for me. We prayed for her because she had family that hadn't been able to come over from the U.S. She was, I don't even remember what, nationality she was, and it doesn't matter.
Yep.
But look for God in those things. Look for those little whispers, even when he feels so far away and so silent. And when things are so hard, I didn't really feel like I had a choice but to lean on him. And I didn't have a choice because my community and my family didn't allow me that choice either.
Right. So the strong community was
so
important.
I guess that would be my first thing is if you're going through it alone, you don't have to. There is someone. There has to be someone who will, fight for you and fight with you. And that's what I had. And so it made a huge, huge difference just in my mental space. So
such good words.
Sometime in the next year, we'll pick up the second part of this story, which is what does it look like now in the insurance agency now that Lauren Layman has gone through all of this adversity and God is moving her into that third generation of leadership. Lauren Layman, thanks for being with us today.
You bet. Happy to be here.
You've been listening to I Work for Him with your host, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. We're Christ followers. Our workplace, it's our mission field, but ultimately, I work for Him. This episode of I Work for Him is sponsored by SaferNet.com, PatriotMobile.com/I Work for Him, and the U.S. Christian Chamber 2026 Expo, found online at SWC2026.com, code I Work for Him.
Thanks for listening to the I Work for Him podcast with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. Please visit iworkforhim.com to learn more about connecting your faith and work, to join the I Work for Him Nation, and to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. While you're there, check out the Tapestry Database, a growing directory of faith and work organizations. You can also follow us on social media at I Work For Him to stay up to date and meet our guests. If today's message spoke to you, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Your review will launch more workplace missionaries across America. That's I Work For Him and online at iworkforhim.com. I work, the number 4, him.com.